So I hope Gail shows up. Uh, sort of, I'm doing this topic because she suggested it. It's a good topic anyway, and there's always recordings. But so her original question had been quite some months ago, what the best way to handle doing a multiple projects on a single site. Um, and in her case, she mentioned a multi-acre site. So I just made this sort of fake site with a property bounds, their property line, and I think it's right at 2 acres, like that. So, just in the spirit of uh, what she was asking for. And so that sort of triggers a discussion on a couple of different ways to assemble um, multiple buildings or multiple components into a single file. So I'm going to concentrate on referencing today mostly and touch on project sharing for a couple of reasons. Well, really, the original question concerned how you could conglomerate multiple small projects into a larger work file. And so referencing is really a great way to achieve that. Project sharing, as we'll see, it's sort of the opposite problem. You have a single large project and you need to break it up into manageable pieces so that multiple coworkers can work on it at once. The other difficulty with um, having a topic like project sharing, uh, the the second sort of schema that I mentioned is it's really hard to show that fully with just one person on one machine. You really need multiple people and to sort of show how that works in every detail. And I just haven't gotten it together to sort of get one or two other people to do this with me. Anyway, so what I've done here is I've imagined that we have a large site and that we're going to place a couple of buildings on the site. And just to kind of give myself a little bit of traction and some space, I went ahead and uh, did a bit of advanced work, sort of setting up these very, very, very simplistic sort of files. And then I realized I probably need to quit a couple of things here and then probably share my entire screen so that you can see my menus. I often forget to do. Okay, so you should now be able to see my menus. That somebody type in and let me know if that's the case.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so this is really a, a site model. It's it's really as simplistic as possible. I just made a bunch of made up contours and made the site nice and big. And then this sort of gravelly area represents the actual hypothetical property. And so the way I did that is I just basically drew a rectangle and in the AEC menu, create objects from shapes, turned it into a property line. And having nothing to do with the topic at hand, you can see that because it's superimposed on a site model, I can also turn it into a site modifier, which is a texture bed in this case. And I assigned it a class that would give it some differentiating texture. Doesn't really matter what it is. So that, you can clearly see here's the overall topography that we have, and then this is the actual site. So I think pretty straightforward. And so I'm just going to leave this site alone and we're gonna work with it a little later. And then I've got another file over here, which is sort of a cartoon of a building. It's just has a couple of stories and a roof, and no stair or anything like that. It's um, kind of silly, really. And you can see that I've got different layers on it in case we need to deal with some project sharing later on in this meeting. So I've got a foundation layer where I've drawn my grade beams as walls that are styled in a particular way. And the slab itself is just a floor or a slab. I've got a ground floor with some walls and door, and I've got an upper floor and then a roof. Really quite simple. And so that's potentially one of our buildings. So what I want to do is I want to create a new file here, and it's completely blank, and I'm just going to change the scale just to something that's manageable for me, say 1 to 10. And in this file, I've got really absolutely nothing. No classes, none class in the dimension class, no resources, no simple. And so what I'm going to do is under the view menu, I'm going to create a viewport. And so you can see that by default, the create viewport dialog box comes up and it wants to give me a viewport on the design layer. And I can give it a name, of course. I'll just call this reference site. And I'll put on design layer 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and select a source. And there aren't any other layers in this document, so current document isn't going to get me anywhere. So I'm going to go with external document and create a new reference. So this is very much like creating a viewport inside on a sheet layer when you're putting together a floor plan or something like that. Some important differences though. So it's conveniently navigating me to where I want to go, which is the folder for today's talk. And here's that site file that I just was showing you a few moments ago. So I'm going to go ahead and hit. Let's go ahead and look at options. Yeah, never mind. We'll hit open. And initially, it's going to be an absolute path, but we may want to eventually change that to a relative path. But that's currently grayed out until we actually get it all set up and then save. So we're going to have to go back and change that later. We can automatically update on when we open the file. I prefer to do that manually. And we can save the reference cache to disk. That makes seeing what's being referenced faster. So we'll hit OK. And then there's the layers in the document that we're referencing, and there's only one layer, the site model layer, so I'm going to make it visible. And you can see that there's a bunch of classes. These are all classes that are in the file that is being referenced. These classes don't exist in the current file. And you can see all the classes that are turned on, and I can change those. And by displaying planar objects in a top plan view, I'll get 2D objects. So what's going on here? Well, good question. If we look at in the object info palette and we click on the viewport, let's go back and look at the classes menu here. You'll note, as I said before, there are a bunch of classes that are in the file that is being referenced. And if we look at the organization dialog box for the current file, you'll see that we only have 2 classes, the default dimension and default none class. So you do not have to have the same class schema in your file that's being referenced and the file that you're referencing to. You absolutely don't. In fact, there's a lot of situations where it's desirable not to have the same class schema. So for example, if you're referencing a consultant's file and they use a completely different class system than you, and you don't want to import all of their classes, right? But there are certain advantages to having the same sort of class structure in all of your files. So I'm going to rectify that situation and in a minute. But first, I'm going to show you where it kind of really pops up. So back to the viewport. Again, we're in the file that is with the viewport reference. And we're going to go to classes. And you can see that right down here, there's this little innocuous use current documents class visibilities. So that is a really, really useful checkbox to have checked. I'm going to go ahead and check it, and then I'll get an alert. And there it is. So if I check this checkbox and I don't have the same class structure in both files, the files being referenced and the file referencing, then there may be times when this doesn't work properly. So I'm going to hit OK, acknowledge that, hit OK. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the site file. I'm going to import all those classes. Let's go to the organization dialog box again. And I'm just going to go to a new class. And I'm going to navigate over here. I mean, I did it kind of quickly. So import classes, you've got all these, yours probably looks something like this when you first open it, where it has all these sort of standard AIA classes or standard Vectorworks classes, whatever. But there's this button here in the dialog box called choose. And so I can navigate to any Vectorworks file. In this case, I'm going to navigate to the site file, and I'm going to hit open. And it's going to list all of the classes that are in that file, just like a template. So I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to ask me if I want to replace existing classes, which in this case is the none class and the dimension class, and I'm fine with that. And so now, boom, in the file that contains the reference, I now have the same class system, right? And so now, when I check this box, it doesn't matter what visibilities I check in this dialog box from the object info palette. The only thing that matters is what classes I currently have on. So for example, here, I'm going to turn off the property bounds class, hit OK. And you can see that property bound for the site disappeared, even though in the object info palette for the viewport under classes, property bounds is turned on. This little checkbox down here overrides all of that. And the reason that's helpful, actually, is let's say that I have a file that I'm referencing, and I want to be able to show that as a ground floor plan, right? Then obviously all of my electrical and ceiling classes, I want those turned off. But then if I also want to create within this file that where I have the viewport, if I also want to create a reflected ceiling plan, then obviously I would need to turn those ceiling and electrical classes on, and there may be some floor plan classes or floor plan related classes that I would want to turn off. So if I don't have this checkbox, I'm going to need to import a separate viewport for every single instance where I expect to use that reference generated drawing. So I would need to to import that viewport once for a ground floor plan, and then again for a reflected ceiling plan, and then potentially again for interior elevations or uh, building section. So I start to have a lot of different viewports, and keeping track of all of those and figuring out which one is which, and it's just becomes kind of a big management overhead. So I think it's generally better if you can have kind of a universal class system that you're going to apply across all of the different files that are going to be coming together in an aggregate to describe your project, which, today I'm just going to show 2 buildings on a site, but obviously that's just an example. It could be any number of things. So I'm going to take a little pause here and just kind of check in with everybody and see if there are any questions or where everybody's at. Bueller? Anyone? No? Okay, right, moving on. All right, I'm going to go back to my site here, and I'm going to go back to that site model settings. And I have graphic properties that I've sort of have set up as an office standard. So I'm just going to apply those. And that'll reset those contour classes to the appropriate, or those contours to the appropriate classes. Hit OK. Okay. So back to our nice color-coded contours with major multiples. Right. And again, doesn't really, 2 things have to happen in order for that change to get propagated to the other file. I have to save. And then in the file where this is being referenced, I need to update that view. And it is still not showing them properly. I'm kind of at a loss here. Why that would be. Maybe, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've got those classes turned on. I do indeed. I wish I could blame it on this being Monday, but Thursday, so can't even do that. All right, well, not sure what's going on. Perfectly fine in 2D. Detail level isn't an issue. All right, I'm gonna circle back to that later. So I've got over here in my design layer, well, I don't think that should really matter. Let's try this. I'm gonna go to these site model settings, and for 2D display, I'm gonna make those just 2D contours, not smooth. I really don't see why that should matter at all. I'm always willing to be surprised. No, that didn't do anything at all. That's just very, very strange. Hmm.
First of all, it looks like you lost something there in the upper right when you did that last move. It's like you had a little bit of ghosting of the contour lines.
Um, you mean when I changed the contours to smooth, from smooth?
Yeah, there was something rendering in the upper right quadrant of the site I don't
Yep.
know,
No,
but just a little
I was
piece of
getting
the
like 5
contours.
contour lines. Yep. I was getting
And,
5 contours
and then he
and
disappeared.
hmm. Yep. I noticed that too.
That,
They're
yeah.
back.
You got a cut plane on or something, maybe?
No, I mean, if I did, then all the contours should show, right?
Right, right.
And I'm in top plan 2D view. Maybe. Let me check my layers. No, no cut plane.
It could be the classes, Francois, in the active document rather than the referenced viewport. I don't know.
Yeah, the classes are on.
Well, maybe you got a soft crash going on or something.
Yeah, no, I think that may actually be it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and save this. Let's call it progress. And that's an aspirational file name, by the way, not necessarily described. So let's go ahead and quit Vectorworks and save everything. When in doubt, restart. This will be something to edit out in the final cut, I guess. Yeah, no. All right. I'm gonna move on. So I've got essentially the same sort of idea in this other file. Let's go to the top line. It's doing the same thing. It's really, really wacky. Wasn't doing that before. All right. Hmm. I don't think it's a elevation issue. Though it might be. I have an elevation of 0 here. Shouldn't be a scale issue. Okay, well, sorry, I'm just gonna keep going. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and change the contours since it doesn't like my classes. At least when these were in the none class, then everything was visible. What I really like about these meetings is it's always an opportunity for me to file a bug report. And then of course, 90% of the time I did something stupid, but can't figure out what that is. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Beautiful. All right. So I've got this viewport with my site, and now I'm going to create another viewport. And really same process as before. We're going to place that on my design layer. I'm going to select the source and create an external document. I could use the existing reference, or in this case, there's going to be a new reference. And there's my silly little box of a building. It's all path relative to the document, which is nice. And I can choose which layers. Turn off the site because there isn't one. And then there are all these classes here. I'm gonna hit OK. And so, there it is. It's a tiny little thing for a great big site. And once again, under my classes, I still have this button down here to use the current documents class visibilities. And here again, I've got a lot more classes in this little building than I have in my overall project file. So I'm just going to go ahead. Obviously, I'd want to be doing this from templates, right, that were already set up with classes ready to go. So I'll create a new class, and I will browse. Select them all. Maybe show only classes that are not. Right. Go ahead and import them. Okay. So now classes can use the current documents class visibilities. So if I look at this from the side, you can see that there's my building, there's my site. They obviously have different Zs. I can just take my building and move it up. I need to move it up more. Or that's good. So there it is. There's my building. It's on the site. And I can go ahead and in my rendering, I can show shadows. And because my referenced layer, reference site model has a heliodon, it's going to show the shadows properly. And I can go ahead and turn on the actually, let's just go to navigation and classes. Turn on my property bounds. Oh, there we go. Here, pick up my building, and let's just arbitrarily move it 20 feet and I don't know, 70 feet. There it is. And the site's got some slope to it. So once again, I'll need to change the Z. Great. Now I've got this file, and really all it has in it are these two viewports. And so if I, make a change, obviously as before, can just double click on this and double click on the wrong viewport. Double click on that, and let's go to the roof layer, for example. We'll open the referenced file. And I can change everything to a 12 on 12, for example. Save. Update. So the roof pitch updates accordingly. And then I can even, do all sorts of things. So I'll go ahead and undo that. I'll save it, and I'll just do a save as, and call it, I don't know, box 2. So now I've got a duplicate of this file. Maybe I changed some different things about it. The roof pitch seems to be a pretty benign thing to change quickly to demonstrate my point. And plate height's not working. Just brute force this and just snap that roof down. No. Good enough. So then on my file here, I could create yet another viewport, or let's experiment with this. I'm going to duplicate that. Over. And you can see that the source here is fixed. So it's not really duplicating a viewport. It's not really going to work very well for me if I just want to create an entirely different reference. So I'll just go ahead and once again start with a create a viewport and select source, a new reference will be box 2. Okay. There it is. Turn it this way. Again, play with the height. Close enough.
So Francois, if you were trying to do identical versions of the building, would you just copy the viewport or duplicate the viewport?
Yeah. Not only could I, uh, I could even, in best developer fashion, do a mirrored version. So here's a mirror command. Excuse me, cat.
Uh,
Here's a mirror command. Now I've just mirrored the building.
Gotcha.
And
So
I
like
can,
if you were doing apartment complexes and the buildings, you had 4 buildings that were exactly the same,
right. Or yeah, or a subdivision or, whatever.
right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And ages ago, people, would make like symbols of an entire building. And that's highly problematic because symbols can't contain layers. And so, you'd have to have a separate symbol for each floor, or I don't know, do some sort of rigmarole. Whereas this sort of viewport system um, works a lot better. And then, of course, if I change one of these, and then update, then, you know, they all change, as you would expect. Not this one though, because that's of course a separate file. So I now have potentially, you know, 3 different people working on this project, where, you know, one person has control of the site, and somebody has a control of one building, and the other person has a control of another building, and everybody's just kind of doing all their work, and then coordinating through this sort of composite file where everything's being referenced in. So so it might make sense to generate, you know, some of my technical drawings, some of my construction documents or design developments or whatever drawings within this overall file, but likely as not, I would generate individual CDs for individual buildings within the individual file. And you know, so long as I've got really consistent classes everywhere, then you know, there shouldn't be any surprises in terms of things being invisible or getting turned off or anything like that. So that's one way to use viewport referencing in order to do this kind of project. Now there's another sort of an older kind of legacy Vectorworks technology for referencing other files, which is to create a reference to another document that essentially sort of copies and pastes entire layers. And I think that is still accommodated, just in case you're dealing with an old file and you want to continue working on it or go back and reference it, refer to it, not reference it. But that's really not preferable in my mind. That this is really the cleanest way to deal with all of that. You know, and you could get creative, right? So for example, I like this floor plan, but I like this roof. So let's duplicate that. Just an option duplicate. Whoops. Only here I'm going to under layers, I'll just turn off floor 2 and roof 2. And then I can take this one and drag duplicate it. Might be easier if I work in plan here, so I can snap things where they need to go. Turn on my clip cube. Get a better sense of what I'm doing. And on this one, I'll just turn off. There we go. That's a pretty ugly little snap, but you get the idea. So, you know, here I'm sort of mix and matching, sort of Frankensteining. I've got the lower floor and foundation of one and the upper floor and roof of the other. You know, I could even flip that around. Not that it matters because it's completely symmetrical, right? But so there, you know, there might be certain situations where it's useful to sort of isolate just one layer of an entire building. So for example, if you were doing a kind of a rendering presentation where you wanted an exploded perspective of your project, you could certainly do that. Where you would just have multiple instances of you could have multiple instances. So in this one, I could that's a little too much explosion going on here. I could do a little presentation this way with just a bunch of viewports, each just referencing different layers of the project file. And then, of course, as I've pointed out many times, if I just let's see, what's my source here? Box. I make some changes here. And update. Yeah. There we go. I didn't save. Then it just updates it. So again, just to summarize, this is an effective technique when you have a compound of multiple smaller projects. Now, harder to demonstrate, but maybe worth discussing a little bit is project sharing. And so that's when you have one building or project that's sort of more than one person can work on at the same time. And so Vectorworks has a project sharing system, and let's look at what that looks like. So under view, I'm going to go to under file, I'm going to go here to project sharing. And again, I can't really fully demonstrate this, but I can at least hit on some highlights and things to look out for. So the first thing that you get is you get this dialog box here, your project sharing setup. And once you create a project file, it's going to change the 3-letter suffix of the Vectorworks file to a Vectorworks project file. And it'll be a VWXP instead of a VWX. And then every time you double click on that project file to open it, it doesn't actually open the project file, it opens kind of a clone of it. And then everything gets referenced back to the project file. So probably better just to walk us through at least the setup here to explain it. So you've got a couple of options. You've got file-based and you've got server-based. Server-based is appropriate if you have a dedicated server that is serving up all of your files, as opposed to keeping your files on a local hard drive and that's probably best for, excuse me, very large, complex files. It's not something I've ever used. File-based is far more common, and you've got two choices: an SMB for your file sharing protocol, or AFP. You can do a mix of SMB and AFP. That's generally not a great idea. SMB you tend to find on Windows machines and AFP on Macs, but you can do an SMB on a Mac as well. I hear conflicting reports. AFP is supposed to be faster, but more finicky. I've used AFP before and it hasn't been a problem. So then my next step here is to assign permissions. So here's my username on my Mac, or it would be your username on your Windows machine. And so you can add users, and you have to provide the username that is assigned to their computer or their account when they log into their computer. That's how project sharing knows who's who. So in this case, I don't have anybody currently logged in with me, so I can't assign anyone, but I could go ahead and make up a username. We'll call him Bob, and assign him a color, and then we can assign Bob's privileges. Right, administrative is full privileges, so can create anything, delete other users, add other users, and so. And then as you go down the line, it's more and more restrictive, where it's either read only, or you can assign certain layers to Bob, or you can assign any layers to Bob, or you can assign layers and resources, so Bob can create textures and so forth, or full project. And you can see what that looks like there. So there's Bob. And I can always go back and change people's privileges, right? And so you've got in this file, I've got some sheet layers because it's from my template file, but I could example specify like which of these is a master layer. I don't have to. I can create where the backup folder goes. So all of these are kind of like Vectorworks preferences. And then I can go ahead and finish that up. All right. So you can see now that this file, it looks exactly the same. Apparently nothing's changed, but you can see that it's now called underscore Francois, and it's VWXW. So VWX being Vectorworks and W being working. So this is a working file. So I can make, editorial changes to this, just like any other file. So it's split, right? So as soon as I start to make an editorial changes, it wants to know if I'm checking it out. So I can check out just that wall on floor 1, or I can check out everything in that layer. So I'm going to check out everything in that layer. I could add a little comment. My colleagues. And make that a double. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and save it to the same folder as before, just to keep everything simple. So my working file has been saved, but I haven't committed those changes to the project file. So what I can do is close and release. And so I can commit those changes, or I can discard them. So I'll go ahead and commit them. And so that's gone, that's closed. Now let's go here. And let's see if I can create a viewport. And so here's the VWXP project file that I created when I turned the box file into a project sharing file. You can see that my personal file is grayed out. That's just a working file. So there it is. So the project file, move it up here. There it is. So you can see that the project file, in terms of sort of part one, which was viewports, externally it looks like a Vectorworks file. It looks like a regular old Vectorworks file. I can reference it in, so forth, and so it can be in a viewport or populate a viewport. Right. That link is broken, so I'm going to go ahead and update that. And I'm going to update all those broken links with this one. So everything will be updated to that. There. Over here, you can see now we've got the double doors right here. Great. Also up here in this sort of exploded symmetric. And then I want to go back and do some more work to it. Back to the Finder. So here's my file. You can go ahead and open that again. Supposed to do that. Not to violate an NDA here, so let's force quit. Go. Let's open that with Vectorworks 4. All right, so I'm back to my working file. I can make whatever changes I want. Maybe turn all these windows instead of fixed glass. Let's make them, biparting casements. And I'll automatically check everything out. course, I can assign those to me ahead of time so I don't have to keep checking things out. And I'll make it a bipart. Okay. Now all those windows are biparts. I mean, because we can. I think that's good enough, the idea. So I'll go ahead and save. But saving alone doesn't commit those changes back to the master project file. For that, I need to go to File, Save and Commit. So I'll close that. Go back to this composite here. And now you'll see, of course, that the VWXP, the project file that I just saved and committed to, that is out of date. Zoom in here and update. And you can see pretty quickly it's changed all of those to bipart encasements, and there we go. So these two systems of conglomerating project files into a large campus, or breaking up a large project, single project, into multiple user assignments, those aren't incompatible. It's not necessarily one or the other. You can sort of mix and match. There's a lot of nuance to project sharing in terms of protocols of how to assign layers or objects to different users. I'll say that really the most important thing about project sharing, well, or either of these sort of grouped work techniques, is that it's really important to have good communication with the team, so that people don't overwrite each other or create these sort of recursive reference loops. You can get into trouble if you kind of lone wolf this stuff and don't talk to your coworkers about what you're doing. So yeah, any questions?
Yeah, Francois, you may have addressed this, but in this case, all of these files are resident on your hard drive, correct?
Correct.
So if you're actually doing sharing, are you using something like Dropbox or Google Drive or
Yep.
somewhere?
Yeah, project sharing will integrate with Dropbox, Google Drive. You have to be careful about latency. And Christopher, I think you're in this meeting and you want to chime in, but a few years ago, we were having some difficulty because basically changes were happening faster than they were being uploaded to the Google Drive. And so that created there were some cases where you kind of had to slow down and wait for some things to catch up. But we've since gone to fiber and much faster upload and download times. So I suspect that would be less of an issue.
But you wouldn't
but yeah,
want to use a personal computer for that if you're interfacing with other people in the office, unless it's the server. Is that?
yeah. So the way we have our office set up is everybody has a personal machine. There is no server, but we all have the same Google Drive account, and so everybody's files are constantly being updated to everybody else's machine. and being updated to the Google Drive. But it's only, 3 or 4 of us. So that's manageable. I suspect that, for an office of 10, that's just, that's little league. You need to have a proper server. And, so the IT issues are not necessarily inconsequential, but yeah, we get by with having this sort of extra redundant system. And I just do it that way because my biggest worry is, somebody upstairs sets their kitchen on fire in our building, the sprinklers come on, and all the
Right.
machines are destroyed. So that's just a way to have kind of a rock solid kind of backup.
Right.
Um, but yeah, for sort of industrial strength projects, like if we were doing like tall buildings or large complex campuses, obviously we'd want a server. But you can do kind of a peer-to-peer setup like what we have, and it works okay.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Francois, also, I think the technical difficulties we were having might have also been because it was a relatively new version of a file share that Vectorworks had rolled out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, because we haven't really exercised that muscle in a while, but I think Vectorworks might have updated that again. And so those
Yeah.
issues might not be, they might have worked out a lot of those kinks that we were experiencing because it was a fresh new version file share.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, but probably at least 4 or 5 years ago. And it was before Vectorworks had the project sharing server. So that's again, if you have a dedicated server, then your work file, your work file is going to be your VWXW, your own personal work file, is going to be on your local machine. But the project file, the VWXP, lives on the server, and you don't want to like duplicate that or move it or any of that stuff. You want to keep everything nice and stable, and that is specifically to address these kinds of issues, namely stability.
Yeah, overall, I
I
thought
don't
it was successful using the file share overall for sure.
Yeah.